After so much interest from part 1, along with a number of comments about even more players I never knew about, I thought it was only right to come out with another video on this. If you haven't already, go back and check out part 1, but other than that, there's no need for an introduction. So get set, because this is part 2 of NFL superstars you didn't know had brothers who played in the league. To start off this list is one of the most recognizable and influential players in NFL history, Barry Sanders. Barry was electrifying to say the least. He played 10 years in the league from 1989 to 1998, and in each of those 10 years, he made the Pro Bowl. He was a Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, and even a League MVP in 1997. He's a member of the 2,000-yard rushing club, and he's a Hall of Famer. Like I said, everybody's heard of Barry, but have you ever heard of his older brother, Beern? Byron's football career didn't go quite as smoothly as Barry's. He began his collegiate career playing in community college, but he then transferred to play running back at Northwestern. And crazy enough, the same year Barry won the Heisman, Beern set an NCAA record for most rushing yards in a game with 295. He was then named honorable mention All-Big Ten after rushing for over 1,000 yards. But he left Northwestern a year early to enter the draft and left college with the 4th most rushing yards in school history. Beern then went on to be drafted the same year as Barry in 1989, but in the 9th round by the Bears. But he was cut after 2 months with the team. A few years later, though, in 1992, after the Lions were low on running back depth, they actually signed Beern to compete for a backup role behind Barry. But unfortunately, he was released before the start of the season. Next up is another all-time running back, Gail Seres. Even though he played over 50 years ago, Gail Seres' career is still widely discussed today. He was drafted 5th overall in 1965 to the Bears and began his legendary career. Unfortunately, Gail's playing days were cut short due to injuries, but he was unstoppable throughout his brief career, starring as both a running back and a returner. In 5 full seasons of play, he was a 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, Rookie of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and 2-time rushing leader. Gail was even named to the 1960s All-Decade team, as well as the NFL's 50th, 75th, and 100th anniversary teams on his way to being enshrined into the Hall of Fame. Gail's natural talent was unquestionable, but he wasn't the only superstar in his family. His older brother Roger was a star in both football and track, but he was undersized, standing around 5'9" and only 150 pounds. Like Gail later in his career, Roger suffered a bad injury as a senior in high school, and that, coupled with his lack of size, led to him losing all of his major college interests. So he attended the small but local University of Omaha, and while there, he was a dual-sport athlete excelling in both football and track. In track, he was one of the nation's top sprinters, and even beat future gold medalist and NFL star Bob Hayes in the NAIA championship in the 100-meter dash. On the gridiron, Roger averaged over 8 yards per carry and 19 yards per reception over his 4 years, but due to his size, the NFL never came calling, nor did the Olympics as he'd hoped for track. However, a few years later, after Gail was established with the Bears, Roger was given a tryout with the team, and he even made it all the way through training camp and actually played a few exhibition games with the team before he decided to leave football for an office job due to the toll the game was taking on his body. Although Roger never played in a regular season game, the youngest Sayers brother, Ronnie, did. Like Gail, Ron was multi-talented and played as both a running back and returner. Like Roger, he spent his college years at Omaha, but was then drafted in the 2nd round by the Chargers in 1969. Unfortunately, he only spent 1 year with the team, appearing in 8 games and rushing for only 53 yards on 14 carries, with another 42 yards gained on 2 kick returns. Next on the list is Gan Upshaw. Gene is one of the most renowned offensive linemen in league history. He was a first-round draft pick in 1967 when he was taken by the Raiders as a guard, and he went on to play 15 years, all with the Raiders, and over that time, he won 2 Super Bowls, made 6 Pro Bowls, and was named to the 1970s All-Decade team, as well as the NFL's 75th and 100th anniversary teams, and he was later inducted to the Hall of Fame. But because of all Gene's success, it's easy to forget that his younger brother Marvin was also a first-round draft pick, being selected in 1968 as a defensive end. Marvin had a fairly long career, playing 9 years in the league, but didn't see the same success as Gene. He spent 2 years with the Browns, 6 years with the Chiefs, and then played his final season with the Cardinals. He never received any major accolades, but he was a known, solid D lineman over his career. Going back to another legendary running back, we have the NFL's all-time leading rusher, Emmitt Smith. Statistically, Smith is the most productive running back in league history, and he still holds records for most career rushing yards and most career rushing touchdowns. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler, former league MVP, and a 3-time Super Bowl champion who was a first ballot Hall of Famer. But did you know his younger brother, Emory, also spent time in the NFL? Emory spent his college years at Clemson, and he went undrafted in 1997, but he signed to the Packers practice squad that season as a fullback. However, he was let go in the preseason, but then, funny enough, he actually signed to the Cowboys practice squad where he teamed up with his all-pro older brother. He then re-signed with the Packers as a member of their practice squad for the 1997 playoffs, where he stayed into the 1998 season. But unfortunately, he suffered a serious hamstring injury in the final preseason game and was then released before spending 1 year in NFL Europe. Now for one of the most famous names in recent NFL memory, Rob Gronkowski. Rob is one of the most dominant tight ends in league history. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time Super Bowl champ, and a member of the 2010s All-Decade Team and the NFL's 100th anniversary team. And while you probably are aware that Gronk had at least one brother that played in the league, did you know that he actually had 3? His oldest brother, Dan, was the first Gronkowski to make his way into the NFL. He was an honorable mention All-ACC selection as a redshirt senior playing for Maryland, and despite being in the process of being named a Rhodes Scholar during his final year of schooling while he was pursuing his MBA, Dan was drafted by the Lions in the 7th round of the 2009 draft, so he put his studies on hold. He played from 2009 to 2013, spending time with Detroit, the Broncos, Browns, and even 1 year as a backup to his little brother with the Patriots in 2011, the same year Rob earned his first Pro Bowl appearance. The second oldest Gronkowski brother, Chris, suited up as a fullback, and like Dan, he started out at the University of Maryland before eventually transferring to Arizona to join up with Rob. While at Arizona, he didn't put up too many stats, but he was known for his blocking ability. Chris was a 2-time All-Pac-10 academic honoree, but he went undrafted in 2010, the same year Rob was drafted. However, he was signed by the Cowboys and was even named to the Pro Football Focus All-Rookie team. Despite this, he only spent 1 year in Dallas before having multiple one-year stints with the Colts, Broncos, and Chargers, but he was out of the league after 2013 following an injury. The youngest brother, Glenn, followed in Chris's footsteps playing fullback, but Glenn attended Kansas State where he was a 2-time All-Big 12 selection, but he too went undrafted in 2016. He was picked up by the Bills but only played 1 game in Buffalo before he was released. He then joined Rob on the Patriots but as a practice squad player. He went through the ringer that year being released and re-signed multiple times, but ultimately he was a part of the team when they defeated the Falcons in the Super Bowl, so he did at least earn a ring. He was then waived early into the 2017 season and his football days were done. Next up is William the Fridge Perry. We all know about the Fridge because of his iconic role in the 1985 Bears defense, where William sometimes lined up as a goal line running back to power his way into the end zone, which he did most famously in the Super Bowl. While he's famous, he actually didn't have as great of a career as you'd think. He played with the Bears from 1985 to 1993 and then spent 2 years with the Eagles before he was out of the NFL. Aside from winning the Super Bowl, he never earned any major accolades, but his younger brother, Michael Dean, racked up awards over an illustrious career. Michael Dean was drafted in the 2nd round by the Browns in 1988, and he stayed in Cleveland through 1994 before joining the Broncos for 2.5 years and ending his career playing 1 game with the Chiefs in 1997. Over that time, he made 6 Pro Bowl appearances, earned 3 All-Pro selections, and because he spent half the season playing with the Broncos in '97, he was even awarded a Super Bowl ring despite ending the year with Kansas City. He may not be as famous as his older brother, but he definitely had the better career. Now moving on to Weapon X, otherwise known as Brian Dawkins. Brian is one of the hardest hitting players in NFL history, and as a 9-time Pro Bowler and 2000s All-Decade Team selection, this Eagles legend is one of the most well-known names in league history. But, believe it or not, Weapon X wasn't the first Dawkins sibling to make his way to the NFL. His older brother, Ralph, was a dual rushing and receiving threat while playing running back at Louisville. He even also acted as the team's punt and kick returner. But despite his all-around talent, he went undrafted in 1994. However, he was picked up by the New Orleans Saints where he primarily played on special teams. But he was quickly allocated to NFL Europe and played with the Amsterdam Admirals. He spent 4 years playing in Europe, but after a bad knee injury, his career came to an end. Back to the great lineman, we have Jonathan Ogden, who's easily one of the greatest offensive linemen ever to play in the NFL. After being drafted 4th overall by the Ravens in 1996, he first earned a spot on the All-Rookie team before going on to make 11 consecutive Pro Bowl appearances from 1997 through his final season in 2007. Jonathan helped the Ravens claim their first Super Bowl victory in 2000, and to no surprise, he was eventually inducted to the Hall of Fame. But did you remember that his younger brother, Marcus, spent 6 years in the NFL? Marcus was drafted in the 6th round in 2003 by the Jaguars, also as an O-lineman. He wasn't as successful as his older brother, but he did manage to play 6 seasons in the NFL with the Jaguars, Bills, Titans, and even joined his brother on the Ravens for the 2004 and 2005 seasons. Unless you're a true Buccaneers fan, Leroy Selman is one of the least discussed NFL legends. He was the first overall pick in 1976 as a D-end and played each of his 9 seasons as a pro with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In those 9 years, he was a 6-time Pro Bowler and named Defensive Player of the Year in 1979. He was also named to the 1980s All-Decade Team and NFL's 100th Anniversary Team, as well as eventually being enshrined in the Hall of Fame. While Leroy is the most talented, he's actually the youngest of 3 football stars. His oldest brother, Lucius, didn't actually play in the NFL, but I thought it was worth mentioning that he did spend 2 years playing professionally with the Memphis Southmen of the World Football League. His middle brother, Dewey, may have been 1 year older than Leroy, but he actually came into the NFL the same year as Leroy in 1976. But while Leroy was selected 1st overall, Dewey was taken in the 2nd round, but what's really crazy is that they were both drafted by the Buccaneers. Like Leroy, Dewey played on the defensive side of the ball as a D-tackle and linebacker, and sometimes they even lined up next to each other on the D-line. He played with the Bucs until 1981, before ending his career playing 1 season with the Chargers in 1982. But what else is crazy is that in 1979, both Leroy and Dewey were named to the All-Pro team. Jim Thorp is quite possibly the greatest athlete to ever live. While I'm focusing on his football career for the purpose of this video, he was also a 2-time gold medalist in track, and he played 8 years of Major League Baseball. But despite all he accomplished in the world of athletics, he may be most remembered for his time on the gridiron, specifically for his time on the Canton Bulldogs, now the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Jim himself has a place in Canton, and is remembered today as one of the first great football players and a pioneer of the game, even acting as the first ever president of the NFL. It's safe to say Jim's legacy is cemented in history, but did you know he had a brother that also played pro football? His older brother, Jack, was a great athlete himself. He didn't leave the same mark on the game as his younger brother, but he did share the field with him for 1 season playing with the Orang Indians in 1923. The Thorps were of Native American descent, and they were members of the Sac and Fox Nation. The Orang Indians were symbolic because, like their team name, they were a team comprised only of Native American players. With Jim acting as both the team's coach and starting tailback, Jack led the way playing guard. However, this was the only year that Jack played professional football. Another throwback player and legend of the game on this list is Steve Van Beeren. Although he played back in the 1940s and early 50s, Van Beeren is still recognized as one of the all-time greats today, being a member of the NFL's 75th and 100th anniversary teams. He started at halfback for the Eagles, where he was a 7-time All-Pro and led the league in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns 4 times. He even led Philadelphia to back-to-back NFL championships in 1948 and 49. He was also a returner and played on defense, recording 9 interceptions and 14 fumble recoveries in his career. Steve is still widely regarded today, but his younger brother, Ebert, may not be as familiar a name. Ebert followed the same path as Steve and made it to the NFL as a halfback. However, he was actually drafted to his brother's team, the Eagles, in 1951, which was Steve's last year of playing. So, Ebert moved to fullback and paved the way for his older brother on his way to the end zone. Unlike Steve, Ebert's career lasted only 3 seasons, and he only compiled 61 rushing yards. He did also play defense, as was common in those days, and he had 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, and a safety. Next up are JJ and TJ Watt. The reason I'm listing them together is because just about everybody knows who they are. They combined for 12 Pro Bowls and 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards so far. But there is another Watt brother that isn't talked about quite as much. This being the middle Watt brother, Derek. Like his brothers, Derek spent his college years at Wisconsin playing fullback, and while he was there, he led the way for Melvin Gordon as he went on to break collegiate rushing records. So 1 year after Gordon was drafted by the Chargers in 2015, they then selected Derek in the 6th round in 2016 to reunite the duo. Derek stayed with the Chargers for 4 seasons until he joined TJ on the Steelers from 2020 through 2022. Derek spent his career as more of a role player, often recognized for his solid play on special teams, and because of his work ethic, he was able to pave a 7-year pro career. Then there's Joe Flacco, who actually had 2 brothers who had stints in the NFL. Joe was one of the most stable quarterbacks in the league while at the helm of the Baltimore Ravens for 11 years from 2008 to 2018, but surprisingly, he never earned a Pro Bowl appearance in that time. But he did lead the Ravens to a Super Bowl victory while taking home the game's MVP award and also setting the NFL record for most touchdown passes in a postseason with 11. Since leaving Baltimore, Joe's become a journeyman in the NFL, but he's brought value to every team he's been on. But did you know he wasn't the only elite Flacco in his family? Joe's younger brother Mike was a dual sports star in high school, but where he truly excelled was on the baseball field. Mike was drafted by the Orioles as a third baseman in 2009, but after a few years in the minor leagues, he chose to try his hand at football again, and at age 26, Mike enrolled at Division II University of New Haven, where he quickly excelled as a tight end. After being named an All-American his senior year, Mike signed as an undrafted free agent with the Chargers in 2014, although he didn't make the squad. But he would have another stint with the Jaguars before a brief stop with Joe's team, the Ravens, although a career in the NFL never materialized for him. The youngest Flacco brother, Tom, was also a dual sports star in high school, but like Joe, he picked football for college and started out his collegiate career at Western Michigan as a quarterback before making stops with Rutgers and Towson. As a senior at Towson, he was named Conference Player of the Year and First Team All-Conference, but he went undrafted to the NFL in 2020. Tom did have a tryout with the Arizona Cardinals, but after not making the roster, he moved on to the CFL for a few years with the Saskatchewan Roughriders and Ottawa Redblacks before a 1-year stint in the XFL with the Houston Roughnecks. He then spent 1 year with the San Antonio Brahmas of the UFL before his playing days came to an end. Now to end this list is Christian McCaffrey. Christian is by far the most well-known of the McCaffrey brothers. Since his days at Stanford, he's been one of the most talked about players in the football world, and so far, he's lived up to the hype. He's made 3 Pro Bowls and was named Offensive Player of the Year in 2023 after joining the 49ers. Now, some of you may be aware that Christian's younger brother, Luke, came into the league last year as a rookie wide receiver with the Commanders. But do you remember his older brother, Max, who was actually the first McCaffrey brother to make his way into the league? Max came into the NFL 1 year before Christian as an undrafted free agent when he signed with the Raiders as a wide receiver. However, this was the beginning of a bumpy NFL career for Max. Over 3 seasons from 2016 to 2018, he spent time with the Raiders, Packers, Saints, Jaguars, and finally the 49ers. In that time, he caught only 1 pass for 4 yards while with the Jaguars. It wasn't pretty, but he still put in 3 years at the highest level of football. And that'll wrap up today's list, but believe me, there are many more sets of brothers that I could discuss, so leave me a note in the comments if you want to hear more. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing so you're in the know when I make my next upload. It'll really help me grow the channel. But until next time, get set because I'll have another video coming soon.